What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of O Tangents, Office Hour Tangents, the OT for short, where I just continue on the conversations and discussions that I may had in class, usually the tangents that I take during class where I might not have been able to expound on them, so I just expound on them on this podcast. So actually, this week marks the first week of summer, even though we're in the office all week for, just to wrap up the semester. But, I'm on summer break, so no classes, I'm not coming from class right now. But I did want to start talking about a specific topic that's kind of dominating the airwaves right now. But I didn't want to talk about it from just a regular perspective. I've been going back and forth with my boys. I'm following news stories, listening to the audio. But at this point, I'm kind of done with it. But I did want to tackle it, but I wanted to tackle it from a, office hour tangents type of way, meaning that I want to kind of wrap it up inside of design, tech, or pop culture, right? So today I'm going to talk about the subjective nature of design. So I touched upon it in a previous podcast. I can't remember which one right now, but I touched upon kind of like how I teach in basic design. Like I have a basic graphic design class. I've also taught classes like principles of design, but basically like your intro level art and design courses. And I'll have to teach them about the subjective nature of design, meaning, and I just kind of pose it to them like this, like 2 + 2 is 4 in math class, right? If you write 5, it's wrong. If you write 3, it's wrong. But if you write 4, it's correct, like 100%. But in design, it's a little different. You can follow all of my directions and you can do everything you were supposed to do, but the subjective nature of the in-between is what kind of trips up a lot of people when they start studying design. It's that subjectivity that we're not really taught in K through 12 classes, because it's usually, I won't say usually because I know there's a lot of exceptions, but usually it's like, okay, do this exact way and then study and then show me and prove that you know how to do it. So take this test or do this project or write this paper, right? And I need you to do it kind of exactly how I need you to do it. As you get older and get through more advanced classes, of course, it gets to the point where you're able to kind of make your own choices and make your own decisions and kind of interject your own style. So in what I study and what I kind of practice in, it's like the style piece, which is very subjective. What floats this person's boat may not float this person's boat. If and especially I'm very big on user first design, design thinking and user first design. And you have to really study the user in the beginning before you even start trying to solve the problem, right? So you got to know your audience. So that's how I kind of like just explain the subjective nature of design to students, because a lot of time when they first start in our programs, some of them struggle not with the work, they struggle with the subjective nature of grading. Because, we are in college, so I do have to give things grades. I do have to score things. Like I have to. I don't say I have to. I'm trying to figure out a way that I may not have to in all the classes. But right now, every class I teach, it comes with grades, and there's a subjective nature. So a simple rubric may be you follow directions. You included all the elements that were required. There's always, especially if it's a design-oriented class, there's probably like a design quality rubric. There's probably maybe like a technical ability rubric. Especially that design quality, that's subjective. I can say, hey, you used the correct blue or you used the correct width of a line, but really it's kind of like, is it effective or not? And I'm the judge of if that's effective or not, just because I've been doing it longer than this person. Not to say I'm better or that I'm more talented, right? Because we all know people that are more talented, but that doesn't necessarily equate to success, right? So I just try my best to teach the principles and the things that I'm asking for. And then when I turn them loose and they hand things in, they might have spent 10 hours doing something. And that might have been the longest they've ever spent on a project before. But then they might come to class and I might say, but this isn't effective. I try to stay away from things like bad or good or stuff like that. But I can use things like incomplete, ineffective, not following the mission statement, not solving the problem, right? But that gets subjective and that stresses people out. So the subjective nature of design, meaning the subjective nature of how we see things, creeps into every facet of our life. And it's rarely taught. It's rarely taught in a classroom type environment. We just do it. We just naturally do it. And we start doing it as soon as we become self-conscious, right? Really. So I just wanted to kind of, I'm gonna go down the line, right? And then I'm gonna present some brands, some entities that we pit against each other. And I'm going to try my best to explain this subjective nature through these brands. And then I'll lead into what I'm going to be talking about. So the first thing, the first couple brands that I'm going to talk about, because I always have a discussion with my class about, iPhone or Apple versus Android or Apple versus Microsoft or iPhones versus Pixels and all that good stuff. And I bet somebody's debating it right now. I bet 1 million people are debating it right now somewhere in America, right? So let me just start off with this. So, full disclosure, I've had first devices. Also, I've been a Android guy since my first smartphone, right? I've been I can't remember my first smartphone, but I think it was a Motorola. It was like a Moto something. I remember, and it was just strong. And I've kind of been with Android, kind of Motorola. Then I switched to Pixel soon thereafter. As soon as the first Pixel, like Google Pixel came out, I was on the Google Pixel. So these two phones right here, they're it's the iPhone and it's the Google Pixel. So I'm using Google Pixel because I'm not just saying Apple versus Android, because Apple is a computer company and Android does a lot of stuff. So I'm just really specifically talking about iPhones versus Google Pixels. Okay, since the Google Pixel is basically the most true to the base Android operating system phone you can get, just as the iPhone is the base Apple the iOS that you can get, right? So and I just want to, it's not like what's better or what's not. So like, again, full disclosure, I've been an Android guy all the way up until 2 years ago, where I basically broke down and got my first iPhone, basically because of the blue bubble. I mean, it's kind of like getting bullied in school. Like, that's how I kind of felt. And I didn't do it because of that. I almost probably stuck with Android in spite of that. But at this point, I remember I missed a few messages, and I was just, I was dropped out of maybe just one text message thread because I had green bubbles coming through. And when I researched the blue-green thing, and I tried to do some like backhanded ways to get my bubbles to be blue, because I don't want to say it was really affecting my business, but it was kind of affecting my business. So, and then the other reason I jumped to iPhone 2 years ago is because this iPhone 13 was the last mini. So I like small phones. I think I mentioned that in another podcast, but I like small phones, and it was like the last small phone that I can find in maybe forever. So I decided to make that jump. But I'll probably make the jump back to Pixel when I'm ready for a new phone. But so I've used both. I've had both. I'm a Apple guy. Every computer I've owned is an Apple. I'm a designer, so every computer, the computers that I used in the computer lab in undergrad were Apples. My first computer I ever got was a Apple G4 Tower. I've had about 4 or 5 MacBook Pros. I have about 3 iPads. Like I'm an Apple guy, right? But I refused to get an iPhone because I didn't want my whole ecosystem to be Apple, right? But anyway, when I talk about the debate between iPhones and Androids, when I ask specifically my classes, because they're the target demographic, and I'm like, and it's usually like, who in here has an iPhone? It's always like 95% of the people. Like there might be 1 or 2 Android people in the room, but usually it's all iPhone. And they're like, ew, yuck, to all Android type conversations. And I asked them why. And it's the why where the subjectivity comes. And I'll ask them why, and they'll say things like, I don't know. Apple just does things and it just works. If I had to sum up the answers of all the students I've ever had that I've asked this question to, it's usually Apple just makes things and it just works. And it just works. And then they mention the blue bubble, right? And then I'm like, be specific, like what just works? And they really never, they were like, when you could do this and that, and I'm like, Android's been doing that for 7 years. It's usually something like that. And they're like, well, I just like Apple better. And it's just, which is cool. And then I try to explain that leads me down the path where I can kind of explain design to them better. And why Apple, this is something I heard. Don't fact check me on it, but I've heard that they spend like the most money or some of the most money on design, on just design, the designers, and just an investment in design. They spend the most money out of like some of the big tech companies. And for good reason. I think the design of Apple products is the reason why it sells, not necessarily the technical aspects of the iPhones and Apple products. So the subjectivity, just people looking at the screen, looking at the 2 phones right now, some of them are going yuck to the one on the right just because it has a G on the back, right? And some people are saying hooray to the one on the left just because it has the Apple. It's like a status symbol. And us as consumer beings, right? People that consume things, we have to go to the smartphone place and we have to make a decision whether we're getting this phone, this phone, this phone, this phone, this phone. And it's all these elements that make us, make it easier to make our decisions. So just think about why you have the phone in your pocket. If it's I'm only going to stick with Apple, why? Like, why? And then, everybody have a different reason. Like I gave you my reasons. I did want the blue bubble. I wanted a small phone. I do see the benefits of this thing just connecting to all my other Apple products very easily, right? But I also see the detriments. I see that I actually prefer, so talking about my preference, I actually prefer the Android operating system. I prefer the Material IO design system, which is, for those of you that don't know, it's just every kind of screen-based interface has a design system nowadays, which is the way everything looks. And it's the rules behind the way everything looks and moves and all that good stuff. So, for instance, how drop downs look, how it zooms, how it swipes, how fast the swipe is, how rounded the corners of the buttons are, what fonts are used for text boxes. Like everything you kind of see is part of a system. So there's not a designer kind of like designing everything all the time. They're just kind of like pulling in things from this design system, almost like stickers. Almost like stickers now. You just like use this sticker for here. I need a drop down, get the drop down sticker. I need a text box, get the text box sticker. I need a bottom navigation, get the bottom navigation sticker. So I just prefer the Android design system more. It's just more, in the reason why I like it better, because it's just more direct. It's more machine like. It's more like if if I do something, it's going to do something immediately. Like the edges aren't so round. It's not so bouncy. And having the iPhone, and when I ask the students which they like best, a lot of times they don't know how to say it, but it's kind of like when they say, I just don't know, it just feels better. It's just better. And then I get them to kind of admit that it's a feel. And they can't explain the feel, but it is definitely a feel. And I call it, pause, the jiggle. It's the Apple jiggle. I call it the Apple jiggle. It's like the way it just feels. The way the buttons move when you press them, the way the swipes move, the way when you go between screens, things zoom in and zoom out and swipe away and go away, and you hit a button and everything goes away and it comes back and it bounces, and even the vibration of it. And I call it the Apple jiggle. It's just even the rounded corners. I bet I don't know this. I didn't do any research, but I wouldn't doubt that Apple has a patent on all that stuff. Like, has a patent on its jiggle, has a patent on the roundness of the corners. Like, I bet they won't allow any other operating system to use exactly the amount of roundation. That's not a word. The amount of roundation on the corners of buttons and text fields. I bet they have a patent on the way their phone vibrates when it vibrates. And if not, I would try to get it, because all of that together lends to the feel. And even the rounded corners of the actual device, it's never the same as any Android. I bet they have a patent on that. Like, you just can't, even though every smartphone, 95%, everyone looks exactly the same, there is those little differences that we do notice. We notice tiny differences if we're committed to a brand, if we're committed to a product. We notice when things change, even by the pixel a lot of times. Right? How the camera lenses are laid out in the back is a big deal. Students told me, they look at, you only have 2 lenses, or this person has 3. That's like a status symbol. That's all purposeful, in my opinion. So it's like that feel. So when we're talking about, how we judge design, and based on feel and looks, it goes far in how we kind of move just throughout our days, right? And it's an unconscious thing too a lot of times. So some other examples are Adidas versus Nike, right? A lot of these brands I would call cult brands, CULT, cult brands, because a lot of these brands have followings. Like, for instance, Apple definitely has a cult-like following. I wouldn't say Android has a cult-like following. Even Google or Pixel, I wouldn't even say they have a cult-like following, to be honest. It's kind of like they catch everybody that doesn't belong to the Apple cult or the iPhone cult. Android just catches the rest of them. Because it's like the Microsoft back in the day. Like, if you had an Apple computer, you used the Apple operating system, right? But that was the only place you can use the Apple operating system. Every other computer that was manufactured by Dell, Gateway, wherever, it used a Microsoft operating system for the most part, if it wasn't Linux or something. So it's not really a cult. It's just to catch all the rest, because all the rest is always going to outnumber the cult, right? But the cult brand can always rely on, I don't say always, but most of the time rely on their cult followers to buy in without even having to advertise them. They just have to say, hey, a new iPhone's coming out, and they know that cult followers will go get it. A new MacBook Pro's coming out, they know the cult followers will go get it. And they can always rely on those people as long as they keep on appeasing them to pay the bills, to keep the lights on. And then everybody else that comes in and buys it is like icing on the cake. That's how I assume it goes, right? Whereas Android, I don't see it like that. They're just like, if you're not in the Apple cult, we'll get all, we'll take all comers if you're not in the Apple cult, right? And it's a different way of functioning. So like I said, another brand is Apple versus Nike that I talk about. And, I would say Nike has a cult-like following. I know people that will only buy Nike products, and they won't even sniff on anything else from Adidas, Reebok, New Balance, or anything else. But it's just like, ask yourself, which do you prefer? Some of you may say, I don't care as long as it's a good deal and it feels good on my feet. I get it. But some of you say, nah, Nike. And if you said that, why? Like, why are you saying Nike? Like, think in your mind or even write it down. Like, come up with 5 reasons why only Nike. And I bet you it's hard. I bet you it's difficult to come out with 5 reasons. I bet one of those reasons, you comment if you have any, you're like, oh, that was easy, 5 reasons. But I bet it's going to be difficult to do. And I bet one of them you will want to say, it just feels better. Or they just look better. And it's like, why? But why does it look better? And it's usually a feel. It's something you can't put down on paper. You just feel it when you go on the finish line. You just attracted more to the Nike section than the Adidas section or the Reebok section or the New Balance section or the Yeezy section or whatever, right? And it starts with the logos. I'm not even talking about the logos right now. It's just kind of like your experience with the product. And if you're a product designer, you have to know these things, okay? But it's very subjective. Another one I won't spend too much time on is Chick-fil-A versus McDonald's. It's really Chick-fil-A versus the world, according to my students. When I mention Chick-fil-A in class, they're like, yeah. And it's usually my class starts late in the afternoon, so they're hungry. So it always starts the conversation. But, my students are Chick-fil-A fanatics. They almost feel like Chick-fil-A can do no wrong and that anything else is just the worst. It's unhealthy, it's nasty, it's blah, blah, blah. But then I asked them, like, why they like Chick-fil-A. It really just sells chicken, and it's expensive chicken at that. And this one of those things where they just kind of look at me like, they're just nice people. They're very polite. That's usually the number one answer. And I'm like, what's that have to do with the chicken? And then they'll talk about the sauce, and they'll talk about the batter. But then I'm like, what about the chicken? Everybody serves chicken, and they're just like, they can't figure it out. But there's a reason why Chick-fil-A drive-thrus are always packed. It's just something that you can't explain why you go there. And I put them at, McDonald's because some people, I don't want to say, people will readily admit, like, I love McDonald's, I'm going to eat McDonald's every day. But I know there's people like that. But, there's a reason why you would go to Chick-fil-A. And it's like, Chick-fil-A is like the alternative to the McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's of the world, right? And Chick-fil-A is like the alternative. So if I had to kind of compare, it's almost like Chick-fil-A is the iPhone of the group. They don't really care about appeasing to everybody, but they know their cult, the Chick-fil-A cult, they can rely on them to come every day and stay in that long line, and they'll sing the praises. They'll even like kind of crave it. I've seen that. Like they'll crave it like Starbucks, right? So it's like, put a finger on it. Like, why do you prefer one over the other? And that'll tell you a lot about why you prefer a lot of things that you prefer, in your path. Another one, Walmart versus Target. I'm a Target dude. And I'll tell you why I'm a Target dude. I'm a Target dude because it's Target. I love the fact that I don't know who coined the phrase Target, but that explains pretty much why I prefer Target over Walmart. Because Target seems to just present itself more like a department store, more like a higher end place. It just feels a little more, it feels a little less cheap, a little less like a warehouse. It feels more like Macy's than it does Costco, right? That's why I prefer Target. There's not a billion, checkout aisles, things just aren't stacked to the top, and there's big boxes and things look messy. It's like, I prefer Target. But for instance, my brother-in-law, he prefers Walmart. Like, he's a Walmart fanatic. And his reasoning, his biggest reason is that I can buy something from Walmart and I can take it back and they don't ask questions. So he has his reasons. You have people that will go to Walmart specifically and won't even try to go to Target, and you have the vice versa. And it's just like a preference, right? Walmart's the big conglomerate that kind of is one of the most valuable companies in the world. And Target is probably up there, but I bet it doesn't have it's not even close to the market share that Walmart has. But Target knows its niche. And then Walmart gets everybody else. Now, this is specifically for some of the conversations I have in class with my students, because whenever I need to break the ice or just kind of change the topic or get them back engaged, because, attention spans are crazy nowadays. Just to get them back engaged, I just start talking about video games. And if you get my students talking about video games, you get them talking. It's just how it goes. So the debate amongst students now, which I had to learn, because the debate amongst my generation it's like Xbox versus PlayStation versus Nintendo, right? Are you a Nintendo person? You an Xbox person? You a PlayStation person? There's different preferences. It feels different. The consoles look different. The color schemes are different. The kind of outlook was very different in the beginning. Now they're kind of similar, but the operating systems were different. They had different games, but like I said, in between PlayStation and Xbox now, they're kind of like, they have the same games. It's weird. But I kind of group them all, because when I'm talking to my students, they don't see them. It's like, who in here has a PlayStation and Xbox? It's just like even, or a lot of people have both. But then a lot of people, if they have Nintendo, they might not have the other two. Nintendo's more like that. Nintendo's more like Apple in that space, where it innovates a lot and it does its own things, and it has a lot of its own exclusive games that you can't get on other systems, but it's still considered a console. So what I'm getting at is like console versus Steam. That logo is a Steam logo. It's Steam is basically like, for the old heads out there, or the people that don't know, I've never used Steam, but I say I'm gonna get on it eventually. But it's basically PC games. It's for PC gamers. It's like PC gamers versus console gamers. And it's like a preference. Like, what's the preference? Like, why? Like, PC gamers, they like the fact that they have a lot of games to choose from. They kind of belong to the monthly subscription, and they have access to all these games. And, a lot of these students now, they don't prefer to be in front of a TV playing video games. They prefer to be in front of their computer screen playing video games. And that's where Steam shines, because it's basically a PC gamer's platform, right? But then the people that like consoles have their own reasons. Like, I prefer consoles. When I'm playing games, I sit in front of the TV and I'm in game mode, because I just want to free my mind, or I just want to like play games. Which, as my students, for the most part, they see gaming and watching shows and movies and even doing homework and doing research on their computer as like one and the same. They're using the same devices, and they don't mind, playing games on a phone, where I do mind. So it's just a preference, which gets me to, because I didn't want to lead with it, because it's just dominating everything. And a lot of the conversations I'm hearing some of them are intelligent. And that's one thing I'll bring from this hip hop battle. It has brought a higher level of intelligence to hip hop conversations, but it just got into nasty land, and I'm sliding my way out of it. But the preference, it's Drake versus K-Dot, right? So the Drake versus Kendrick Lamar, I guess I would call it a battle. But it's turning into just a debate. I would call it a hip hop debate. Or maybe the debate is between the fans, and the actual battle, I don't even call it a battle. It's like a war. Like, it's like war. And the reason why I call it a war, because there's no rules in war. There's supposed to be, but really everybody knows that there's no rules, and it feels like they ventured into no rule land, which got icky. But there's sides. So I don't see a big difference between Kendrick Lamar and Drake and the iPhone versus the Google Pixel, or Nike versus Adidas, or Chick-fil-A versus McDonald's, Target versus Wal-Mart, Steam versus consoles. I don't see the difference. They're two brands, and it's kind of dividing the culture. I don't want to say dividing in a bad way. It's just the people are choosing sides. And usually battles, people choose sides, but it's usually a playful thing. Like, we're watching a basketball game on TV. But this one is getting to the point where it's like colorism, skills, family. It's just real different, right? And there's a preference. So I'm just talking about preferences. So I'm gonna approach it from a creative standpoint, right? Everything on this podcast, I'll try to bring it back to creativity, tech, or something like that. So from a creativity standpoint, okay, I'm a Drake fan. I take that back. I used to be a Drake fan. So you can understand where I stand. So I'm gonna play both roles, right? Maybe I should have a guest the next time to talk about this. I just don't want to talk about it with a guest because I think it'd turn into who's better, and those kind of debates never end, right? But I think the people on Drake's side, let's start with Drake. I think the people on Drake's side have a certain preference for him, just like they have a certain preference for iPhones or preference for Nike. And if you notice, all of these, I kind of put first the more popular, at least in our country, in this culture. So iPhone dominates the market, in the smartphone place. Actually, I didn't put this first. Nike dominates, at least here, but Adidas is very competitive around the world. Chick-fil-A is definitely not dominating McDonald's, but amongst my students, that target demo, they love Chick-fil-A way more than they love McDonald's. Wal-Mart's dominates, even though Target is my preference. So Drake dominates. He's been dominating for a while. Drake has been the iPhone for, I don't know, I would say, venture to say 10, 15 years, maybe 20. My history with Drake's music is I heard him on A Hot or Not on Sirius XM back in the day. And it was probably not even Sirius XM. It was probably just Sirius. And he was on a show that now takes up the Sway in the Morning time slot. I think it was the Angela Yee type show. And he was on A Hot or Not. And usually the Hot or Nots, you listen to the song and people call in and they bash the song. They just call in because they want to bash it in very unique ways. But I turned him on and it was like in the middle of one of his songs, and I listened to it and then I listened to his interview. I liked the song, listened to his interview. He was real polite. He was cool. They said he was from Canada. I didn't know what he looked like. I didn't research what he looked like. I just liked him. And I went on his website and ordered his mixtape, Room for Improvement, sight unseen, and I got it in the mail like a week or two later, signed. So I got like a signed copy of Room for Improvement for Drake. And I remember telling everybody that would listen, this is the new dude. This is the next dude to blow. I was like, Drake, this dude, it was funny because I said, this white dude named Drake from Canada is about to be the next dude. And I remember I would tell anybody that would listen, because when they said Canada, I think I just immediately thought white. So, and sure enough, he blew up. He blew up, and, I was a fan in the beginning, and I won't say I'm a hater or anything. I still listen to his music, but, he does a little more to singing and the melodies, and that's just that doesn't float my boat. So, I've kind of fallen out of favor. K-Dot came on the scene after Drake, and he hasn't been on the scene as long, but he's been on the scene long enough. And my boy Tone Capone, he actually told me about K-Dot before anybody else. The same way I told people about Drake. He was like, this dude named Kendrick Lamar out of Compton, he's about to be the next dude. Like, he's, I've been telling everybody, and boom, boom, boom. And sure enough, he blew up. And he just blew. He has a different brand about him. He has a different subject matter he rap about. He's like the complete opposite of Drake. That's what makes this battle so intriguing, because they're complete. I don't want to say complete opposites. They're opposites in the hip hop game. Whereas, some significant battles I could think about just off the top of my head, like LL versus Cannabis. They were different, but it was just like old MC versus young MC. But they were like, Cannabis was trying to be LL. They were like the same person, just a young and old version. So that was the delineation, like young versus old. Back in the day, KRS-One versus MC Shan. That was South Bronx versus Queens. And, they were the same. They were just like to me, they were like old school hip hop dudes having at it, but they were like the same cat. I'm trying to think, Tupac versus Biggie, that's the famous one. I barely caught out a battle because Biggie never had a proper battle song. He had like subliminals, and Tupac's song was a group posse cut, and it was just weird. But they were kind of the same. They were like street level hip hop dudes. And it was like seeing two dogs fight. Like all of those battles I just mentioned, there's a whole lot of, Common versus Cube. That was the most maybe like, that pitted like two very different types of artists together in a hip hop battle, which was kind of dope. It was Ice Cube. It was really like the West Side Connection versus Common. West Side Connection from the West Side, and it was during the era of West Side all day, and it was versus Common, and he was from Chicago, and he was young, and he was new, and they were different enough to kind of be intriguing, and it got ugly very fast, but it was, they threw water on it quick with Mr. Farrakhan getting involved, which a lot of people thinks, especially my boy Tone Capone, he posted something on Facebook like, yo, we need to get Minister Farrakhan involved in this because this is starting to get ugly. So, but K-Dot has a different, I wouldn't say he's an activist type of rapper because I don't think he's that. He's a very artistic. I would compare, he's more like Andre 3000 than he is Drake, right? So that's the preferences. And I see people taking sides based on that. But also, I'm starting to see this story on CNN. This is like more of like a national story now. Maybe worldwide than a little like hip hop battle in the culture. And it's just like, what side do you take if you're taking sides? And why? Is this two brands, right? Is it skills? Is it like writing ability? Is it delivery? Some people want to go to record sales, which I never thought was a good indication of who's better or not. But, a lot of people, Jay-Z sells more records. That's why he's better than Nas. It's like, that's not a good indication, right? But is it that? Is it their style? Is it their, where they're from? It's very regional. Hip hop is very regional. But I tend to think at this point, it's getting to the point where people are looking at their styles. Some people just prefer Drake's style, his visual style, how he appears and presents himself. One thing about Drake, he's always out. He's always out and about. He's a man of the people. And that's kind of what his handlers have done on purpose. Like he's always at basketball games. He's always at award shows. He's out and about. He always knows. He's always on. Whereas Kendrick Lamar is like opposite. Like he might drop an album, but he might disappear for 4 or 5 years. And you might not hear from him. He might appear on a feature here and there, but you don't see him out like that. And that might not be your preference. Your preference might be like, I like my stars out, right? So I just wanted to attack this battle from a creative standpoint, like a design standpoint, like if I had to make a decision. So in my previous podcast, I have a previous podcast where I talked about when it was Drake, K-Dot, and J. Cole, and I talked about that. And basically my hypothesis in that episode was that Drake is going to win the battle because he's more like LL Cool J than any of them. Meaning that he's battled before, he doesn't back down from anyone, but he's pop culture like LL was. Like LL couldn't beat Cannabis. I mean, LL, in my opinion, second round knockout by Cannabis is a better track than, I think LL dropped like 2 songs, maybe 2.5 songs that were directed at Cannabis. And Cannabis dropped some other ones, but the one that everybody knows is second round knockout with Mike Tyson. And that diss track is one of the best diss tracks ever. Like, go back and listen to it. It's one of the best diss tracks ever. And he went out LL Cool J, like hip hop super royalty. And ultimately he lost the war, but I feel like he won that battle. And I feel like LL Cool J knew it. But he knew he was LL Cool J, and he couldn't beat LL Cool J in the long run. And that's why I thought in the beginning that Drake was going to win the battle, because I thought it was going to be a regular battle. I didn't think it was going to get to research, hard copy type levels. But because of that, like LL loves the ladies, Drake loves the ladies. He raps and sings for the ladies just like LL does, but he won't back down from a battle. Whereas Kendrick is just kind of like, let's drop an album, let's disappear. Let's drop an album, let's disappear. So I'm still not going away from that. I am not sure. So if I had to judge it on who's winning, and I hope it's done. I hope it's done. I really do hope it's done. I don't think it is, but I hope it's done. And this is, and if you don't have context of where I am when I'm talking about this battle, I'm after, it's kind of like after, I want to say Family Matters, if you're following, Family Matters, and then K Dot dropped Meet the Grams, and then another West Coast more upbeat sounding. So I've heard all those. I think it's it, but we'll see. I think K Dot is winning the battle. I think he may be losing the war. That's my thought process right now. It seems personal. So it's funny. It's like when I'm watching Hoopers hoop and when I'm watching boxers box, right? That's a better analogy. Like when I see boxers box, they're like boxing because it's their profession. And if they get too emotional, they always lose. Like an emotional boxer will always lose because you can't go into that ring emotional. You have to go in that ring about business. And you can get emotional before and after. Not even before. You can get emotional after. I say that with, I've always said that rap is a sport. Hip hop is a culture. Rap is a sport. And I think it just seems to me that K-Dot is just, it's personal. I just think it's personal. It's not work anymore for him. It's like personal. I'm trying to destroy this dude's life. And even though Drake started it, I'm pretty sure that Drake started it. No doubt. But I just feel like people saw Kendrick one way, and now a lot of them see him another way. And it might be positive or negative, I don't know, but I just think it's a different way. Like it's like Kendrick's career could be seen before the Drake battle and after the Drake battle, maybe, right? Because he basically let us know that he will go all out, like no holds barred. Like he's going all out. Like if it's wrestling, like if he needs to get the chair from underneath the mat, if he needs to get the barbed wire, if he needs to get his manager to trip you, like he's gonna bring out all the stops to, I don't even say win, but to destroy you. He really tried. A lot of people said he destroyed Drake, but he hasn't. That's the point. That's why I think Drake may ultimately win the war, because Drake is Drake. Drake's not gonna stop dropping albums and music. Like, there's nothing that Kendrick can say other than he does crazy enough stuff that you may need to arrest this dude. Like, that's, in the culture, that's called snitching sometimes, right? And Drake's doing it too. But it always feels like the way it feels is that Drake is responding like I got to defend myself. So if you're going to like say this crazy stuff, I got to come with crazy stuff or I'm going to lose. And it's like a sport, right? And it's a big respect thing in hip hop. So honestly, that's my honest take. But when I take it from like a branding, like what's up with Drake's brand? Drake's brand is pop star. Drake's brand is I drop music almost twice a year. And I drop music all during the year. And I drop like one or two major projects during the year. You're going to see me out at award shows. You're going to see me announcing and hosting. I'm a star. He's more like, I don't know who's Drake. He's more like a personality, like Chevy Chase, Eddie Murphy. You just kind of become a personality beyond your specified how you got in the industry. Like Drake got in the industry through rap, but I don't know if a lot of people still just consider Drake a rapper and that's it, right? I feel like they see him just as a star that can rap and that can also act, and he has fans all around the globe and the spectrum. Whereas K-Dot, I feel like he has mad fans. He's critically acclaimed. but his brand is more so great musician. Like, he's a great musician. Like, I like in one of the battles, he compared himself to Prince, and he compared Drake to Michael Jackson. I thought that was a great analogy, because I think I don't know if it's that close, but it's kind of like close in the sense that Prince was a little more to himself and a little more independent and creative with his music. Like, he's going to do what he's going to do, and he don't want anybody to kind of tell him what to do. Whereas Drake is just making hits like Michael Jackson. He's just making hits. Like, whatever is going to be a hit, he's going to hit. He's going to do that. Right? And he doesn't play any instruments, and he's still going to rock. Whereas I think K-Dot is like, I'm putting in all this work, and I'm coming up with these dope concepts, and my production is off the rocker. And I just think at the beginning, he's like, yo, I should be the greatest. Y'all should say I'm the greatest. And who's the greatest? Drake. Who do I need to knock off to be the greatest? Drake. I just think that's how it kind of all began. And I hope he just realizes that if he stops now, everybody will recognize that he won. And hopefully that'll carry over. Whereas both their careers don't mess up. That hopefully both their careers will ramp up. But I just hope he doesn't lose favor with some of the nastiness. I just don't think Drake, I don't think people, this sounds bad, but I don't think people expect it from Drake. They've already seen nastiness with a couple other battles he's been in. It's just like, we've seen it before. It's like, we've never seen this with K-Dot. And like I said, it's going to be, he might be perceived different. That brand might change. That vision may change. And that's some of the things I tell my students sometimes. It's just like, you can design logos, you can design, websites and whatever else you want to design, but you also can design your personal brand. What clothes you put on, how do you talk, how do you write, what words do you use, what subject matters do you broach, how's your tone, how's your body language. Like, all of that is part of your personal brand. It's kind of like when you come out the house, how do you want people to perceive you? That's very important. That's how I kind of try to start explaining them what branding is in the first place. It's like that logo, you make a snap judgment on a product based on a logo, right? And it's like, you're the logo, you're walking out. And how do you look at all times? And Drake has a specific kind of brand, and K-Dot has a specific other kind of brand. And it makes things interesting. And I did want to talk about the subject, but I did want to broach it from the aspect of, some kind of creativity and branding. But I don't see the huge difference. Like, I think if you look at these two artists as brands and not necessarily personalities, I think it'll make you look at things a little different. And actually, it might make it a little more interesting for you. Like, to look at it from that aspect, because we know both of these dudes have handlers. I call them handlers, but they have agents, they have people around them, they have labels. Kind of like, what you should do. You got your boys, what you should do. You should do that. You should do that. And maybe chill here, cool there, go to this event, do this thing, write this verse. They have dress like this, wear this chain, do this haircut. And it's just like, all because these people, their success feeds people. So basically, if this battle ends up, one of them is gone off, there's going to be, I don't want to say hundreds, there's going to be a lot of people that is not going to get a check anymore. Like, these people are big enough that they're like entities that they're like corporations. So it is serious to see who's going to win this. It's like, that corporation is going to make more money, and the other corporation theoretically may not. I just hope that, usually a lot of times with battles, both corporations will make more money. I wouldn't doubt that they tour in 2 years. Like, there's a tour, right? Call it the there's been all the smoke tour. Call it the understanding tour. They come to understanding, and like, we might not still even like each other. That might be the intrigue of the tour. Like, there might be fights, there might be craziness, and that's why we going to the tour, but we just coming together to make this money. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this last tangents. I think I went on a couple of tangents during that tangent, but I did want to, like I said, approach that subject. It's something that me and my people's been talking about. But like everything else, I look at things from a different angle, and I just want to share that angle on this podcast. So if you want to subscribe, this sounds so corny when I say it. I just need to put together, actually, I need to put together just a recording at the end I could just throw in there, because this is so weird. But anyway, if you want to subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Spotify. I'm also on Apple Podcasts. On YouTube and Spotify, it comes with video, if you didn't know, because I've heard some people have started listening to these things on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and don't realize that there's video accompanied. So I always shoot these with videos because often I have graphics I want to show and sometimes audio. But I think they still function just as audio only. Subscribe on YouTube. If you subscribe on YouTube, it's just Brandan Craft. That's my name, Brandan Craft. And subscribe on Spotify. It's Office Hour Tangents. And if you have any comments, put something in the comments. Like, seriously, like, if you want to debate. Like, I'll debate anything you want to debate. I just want to keep everything design and creative related in this podcast. But if you want to debate about anything else, put it in the comments, or go to some of my social networks. Go to X, go to Instagram, ask me. So I hope this I think this went well. So until next time, peace.